All right, the star is here.
Well, this is a good entrance. This is perfect.
Exactly.
Gordon,
Oscar,
nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
All the way from Boston.
Yeah, all the way from down the hall. You
Great,
made it,
that's right.
Cool. All right.
That's right. We're just, well,
I'll kick it off. So I'm Gordon Van Huysen, not Oscar Berger, and I'm VP of Platform Strategy for Mendix. And I've been given the great opportunity to spend the next 43 minutes chatting with Oscar about what Enexis has been doing. And when I was offered the opportunity to do that, I jumped at the chance because I've been in love with what Enexis does for the past several years. Enexis has one of the best examples, I think, of an app factory that's been stood up to date, and in my personal experience, the most successful one. So it'll be great to have the opportunity to chat with you.
well, thank you. And thank you for coming because I'm very happy. I was here 2 years ago. I remember it was a very hot day and a lot of people stayed outside. So it's crowded. So even all the chairs are taken. There's still a chair here vacant. So if everyone wants to sit in front. But yeah.
Shall we have a seat?
Yeah, that's
cool.
Awesome.
So I'm assuming that most people in the room were at the keynote this morning, and perhaps that's what drove you to this session. There's a very nice reference to Enexis very early in the keynote, and so this gives us an opportunity to go into more detail about what Enexis is doing and how. But the intro to Enexis was brief, I would say, in the keynote. So perhaps, Oscar, a way to start would be to introduce Enexis. Who's Enexis and what does Enexis do?
Yeah, I think it's good to understand what Enexis is, what Enexis does. Enexis is a major player in the energy sector. Well, to come again. Enexis maintains the regional grid for electricity and gas. And so what does that mean? It means about 2.8 million households, about 140,000 kilometers of grid. And that's just around 1/3 of the Dutch energy supply. That gives an understanding.
A sense of scale, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then at Enexis, what's your role?
Yeah, when at Enexis, I'm the manager of the CIO office. So I'm responsible for IT strategy, for governance, for architecture and security. Well, I'm within the industry for about 10 years now, but with Enexis only a short time.
That's a very, very broad remit. Yeah.
That's a very interesting. It's the staff of the IT department. That makes it interesting.
No small task. And so what did you do before Enexis to bring you to this point?
Before I worked with the industry, but more upstream to in the gas value chain. I worked for EBN. EBN is the national oil company, investing on behalf of the Dutch government in oil and gas. And I was responsible for IT. Well, you can understand, on our best years, we had a turnover of 6 billion and a revenue, and a margin of 2 billion. So, yeah, really interesting.
Interesting. So at Enexis, what are the top business challenges that you currently face?
It's good you ask on the business challenges because this is, I will take two. One is everyone is talking about. The first one is the energy transition. And I feel that energy transition is something what's coming, but not everyone knows exactly what's happening. But I think it's good to talk a little bit more about.
It's interesting because I have no idea what's happening. Well, certainly in the Netherlands. So yeah, if you could take us through that would be great.
Well, we used to work in a very stable, predictable business. If you look at the energy demand, the electricity and gas demand, it's one way, and it's based on the urban development. It was based on economic growth, so you could plan years ahead. And the thing is, that makes it not so difficult. We only had a few cold winters where you need additional gas, but our grid was made for that. was built for that. And electricity was even less complex. So, yeah, we came from a stable environment. And then the question is, what has changed?
Exactly.
Right? What has changed that the demand for example, for electricity has grown. If you look at who does own an electric car? Someone? Yes. Well, a lot of people will own electric cars in the coming years. But if you buy an electric car, you need some change within your household. You need to enlarge your installation to be able to provide the electricity. But also your electricity bill will double because of your electric car. So this is, if you look at the perspective of Enexis, we got our workforce had to work quite hard to make that possible, to change all the installations. So that's one part which is changing. The other part is that consumers becoming producers when it comes to electricity. So who has, what do you call, what's the English word? Solar panels on their, yeah. So normally we were providing electricity, but now you are providing electricity to the net as well. So that makes it more complex. That makes it also more interesting. But we have to respond to that.
Well, those are pretty significant transitions for sure.
And the last one is about gas. Due to the CO2 issues, we have decided within the Netherlands to stop producing gas in 2050. So that means that our infrastructure for gas will be obsolete when it comes to gas, just around 2050. And the question is, what are you going to do with it? You might reuse it to put something else into it, and we're looking into that. So that's another challenge. And then the question, of course,
well,
how does Mendix come in?
Well, I was going to wait for that one, actually, because I've got questions between here and there. So it seems to me, and this is not my area of expertise, I know a little bit about energy, but it seems like you've got a raft of a broad set of issues to work with there, from the operational side to monitoring to complete business models.
Right.
So what are you doing in response to that? What do you need to build? How do you think about building it?
Well, the first question is about the workforce. We understand that we need to be more effective, more efficient. And for that, we have selected, as a waterfall process, the right products. We have to redesign our SAP environment. We have to have an Office, an Oracle Workforce Management to connect to that. But it takes a lot of time to build this new environment. And in between, and that I thought it was very smart for my colleagues, they defined something that's called a transitional architecture. And actually, a transitional architecture is an excuse to not comply to the defined architecture. Well, and I'm the CEO office, so I define the enterprise architecture. So if I say there is a traditional architecture, well, then it's okay. Well,
it's official.
It's official. That's right. That's right. So we took the time to build some. You would call it transitional, but you also can call it a throwaway architecture, an in-between architecture. We built applications who fits in, but also already take some of the business value. And I think some people already heard about the sticker app. Did we? No, that's good to tell a little bit, because it's a very easy, simple explanation. All our stations have to have a large sticker which says, be aware, this is, you have to be safe, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. But we have 40,000 of those stations. To define a project and put all the stickers on those stations is quite a lot of work. So we decided every time as a field engineer visits a station, he checks if the sticker is there and he puts on the sticker. But if you do it in an unplanned manner, it's very nice if you have an application where if you come near the station, it sends that this is something what needs a sticker. And you can register directly in the application that you have put a sticker in the station. Well, it sounds very simple, but the amount of time from a planning perspective we saved on that is actually quite a lot. And it's one of those, well, nice examples how we could do. Is that an answer to your question, actually?
Well, it's certainly getting into the meat of it. And I mean, what you're talking about, as I hear it, is the need to transform a lot of things in some sort of incremental way, because you can't wait to do it all in a big bang. So you've got this transitional architecture. And so I've understood for quite some time that the development velocity and the amount of parallel development activity going on at Enexis was very large. So it's one of the things we, of course, love to dig into and understand. Now I understand the driver for it quite a bit more. So you started talking about process changes and cultural changes associated with delivering these solutions that provide incremental value while you're solving a broader problem, even if it's on a transitional architecture, right? Was there more to talk about with respect to that process and approach?
Yeah, we call it now a factory, just to state that we're building on Mendix. And we got now 24 people, some internal, some external. We started with a very small application. And every quarter we split the team. And then we brought in, based on, there was enough work, of course, to split the team. So if we started out with 4 people, we split 2 by 2 and added 2 for every new team. And that way we grew, and we did that every quarter. We grew to 24 people as when it comes to Mendix developer. Then we have some people around it, do some information analysis, with some UX design, but they come in regular. We have the Scrum Master, they're all on top of it, but based on what you want to develop, this defines the growth, or the size of the team. I found it's a good way to grow as a team. And of course, if you start out, it's very important that you get your processes right, to get your richtlijnen, your standards. Because if Krebs goes in, Krebs comes out. So really important to get your standards, your coding standards. And then it takes some time. Your velocity goes up. Yes, you do split, so your velocity will go down after you split. But it makes it possible to grow as an organization as well.
Very good, very, very good. Have you found that there's a kind of optimal team size? I mean, with splitting, obviously, you're making smaller teams and then probably adding individuals into those teams over time. Or does it vary based on project, or what's the...
Well, as I understand, is that it's really based on what you're building. So if you try to say this is the optimum size and this is the team size and this we're working from, if you only build a small application, you might have even 1 developer on it, and don't try to do it with 6 people. I think this is the smart thing to do. If you're trying to build a little bit something bigger, the other way around. We also try, because we built around 100 applications in the previous time, we build about 40 every year, but we also dispose about 10 applications a year. Try to keep your application as small as possible. And that way you're able to, not bigger size of 4 people or 6 people Mendix development per team. I think that's you have to try to keep that under the limit. That's very interesting.
And I would also assume that since you've gone to a more agile approach, and I love that you brought up value associated with one of the apps, very early in the equation, because to me that's one of the measures of are you successful, right? You put those two things together, and I would assume, and let me know if I'm assuming too much, that time to value is something that you really consider, and that you attempt to prove the value of a solution up front. Generally, what does that look like in the Enexis world? How long does it take between inception of a new project and beginning to actually realize value? Not just to get an MVP out in somebody's hands, but get some value out of it.
It really depends on what you're building.
Yeah.
And if I look at that sticker app, we did that quite quickly. And then we have another app. This is very nice. We called it the inspection app.
Mm-hmm.
It's when a field engineer goes into a station and he sees that there's need for painting. At that point, he takes up the app and he fills out what there's a need for painting. The additional functionality is that our SAP team creates an order based on this change by the field engineer, and the depending if we have our own capacity and we do it ourselves, or we send it to the subcontractor, and the order goes to the subcontractor for the painting. I mean, this is a little bit more complex, and I think Leo took about 3 months to build that, just for that. Yeah.
Well,
so that's. I think it's a very nice one because it shows the integration.
yeah, absolutely.
And it saves a lot of time when it comes to planning. And our friends painters can do the work. Yeah.
I think 3 months to show positive results from a process improvement is pretty neat.
It is nice.
That's pretty nice.
Well, the nice part is the integration with SAP.
Uh-huh.
And that is if you can work together, because that means that you also have to work together with 2 teams. You have to together with the SAP team, which works in a different heartbeat. But I thought that we're very happy that we're able to get that complete within the
No
period of
doubt.
time.
No doubt. You mentioned coding standards. I would assume that you. I should stop assuming. I'll just ask the question. Did you also need to put in some form of DevOps and CI/CD process to support the velocity, or is that something that's kind of still to come?
Yeah, this is our recent development, that we moved to the cloud, the public cloud, so AWS. And our primary goal was to give the Mendix developers the ability to actually work on their... if they need additional infrastructure, well, they keep it at that level. They're able to deploy new infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we just got that in place, so this is CI/CD. And that makes it for the team much easier to... They're more autonomous. Mm-hmm. And that's we only have to learn that if you deploy something, but if you don't need it, you have to kill it also.
Additional safeguards
That's
too, right? Because I guess in your line of work, you need to be pretty certain about rolling something into production.
Definitely.
I just love to hear you matter-of-factly say things like, well, we built 100 apps and we do about 40 a year and we retire some. And, I think many organizations would find that to be something to really aspire to. And clearly your team has. How often do you update existing apps? How often do you deliver enhancements or bug fixes?
Yeah, we have the 2-week sprint. And we keep 2 weeks as a circle of deployment.
So you actually release every 2 weeks?
Release every 2 weeks.
On all 100 apps or whatever the portfolio is?
It depends on your backlog.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Uh-huh.
So we're not deciding what to release. The product owner does. you don't need to release on all the 100 apps. I said, well, we got about 100 apps, but we built 40, but we also killed 10. Well, if you don't like the sticker app, we don't need anymore. So
Right.
we killed that one.
Interesting.
But you only deploy on what you're working. If you're working with 24 people, in 2 weeks, right, you know that how many apps you will be deploying.
Right.
So
So you've really stood this up the way people talk about standing these things up, where you've got real product owners that are making real decisions around what are deployed to their user base. That's great.
That's and it's a great way of working, but I think you still have to honor the waterfall way. We have a redesign of SAP, and in fact, that's a complete waterfall project.
Yeah. Well, you were saying that the cycle times, the clock cycles, are different on these different types of projects.
Yeah, and you shouldn't disagree. You have to see what fits. And one method fits for one kind of development, and one time fits for the other one.
Right. And you might have said it, but if so, I didn't pick up on it. How do you think in terms of factory lines that run in parallel? I mean, I would think you must, given what you just explained, but it's probably not.
You try to take a metaphor, and actually, I don't like the metaphor of factory.
Okay.
Because then your developments are factory
workers.
Well,
there is that.
But what the strength of the metaphor is that it's organized. And I liked Agile to be organized. So if you talk about what you expect from your people is that they work from the process. If they stand up, it's every morning. If it's at 9 o'clock, it's at 9 o'clock. And everyone is there. I think that's important, to know that it works like a factory. And for not every software development, it's nice to work like a factory. I talked to a waterfall expert, and he told me, I said, well, this is not healthy. Sprinting every 2 weeks, then you're sprinting all your work time. That can't be healthy. I want to have more time to think and rethink. So there will be some discussions now and then. Yes.
Well, and certainly not all thought processes fit in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
But we still have sprints.
We still have sprints. Or you have to try to look at the minimal viable product to deliver not more than you need, but
out of curiosity, when do you think you'll embark on the optimal state architecture versus the transitional one?
Well, here comes the lifecycle management comes in. And we have to grow on that. And we said we do this in a transitional architecture, so this is the amount of people we need. We learn from it. We adapt the application to our processes, where we learn that certain processes already work. So when we start with the redesign from SAP and the work management, it's going to be more centralized. If you want to have more productivity, we want our field engineer to really plan their work, so that there will be change, but they already learn from what we're doing already now. You expect, if we have the new enterprise architecture, then we can dispose the transitional architecture. What I don't know, what our future in the energy part, in the energy transition will bring us. So another interesting part is how the IoT will develop. Yeah, that's.
Is that the second challenge that you're going to talk
that's
about?
mine. That's the second challenge we were talking about. Because how far are you really able to look ahead? If I'm able to look for, even with the company, we try to look ahead for about 2 years now. So 5-year or 10-year plans are a little bit difficult. So telling if we need this volume of people for the future in this way as well, I don't know. But we see if we move ahead, that new challenges just appear. And like the IoT part is interesting to talk about. We built sensors within our stations. So we got 40,000 stations, and we're rolling out our DALI boxes. And it's so we get sensor data in every 15 minutes, and we have to um, we have to see if something smart comes from it. Within the deployment of the Dali box, we also create an app for deployment of a Dali box. And the only thing we did, and that's also a smart app, if some field engineer deploys the Dali box and he is really connected, then the signal goes to the central, what's called the central station, where we are able to pick up the signal that it's really installed. And then we send back within the app the signal that he has been installed.
And you provision.
Yeah. And that's, and we couldn't have foreseen that when it started.
It's funny how few people consider that provisioning part of IoT. They think about the state where all of the endpoints are kind of up and running.
Everybody's thinking about, the great thing, so it has to business intelligence and what can we do? But getting there, we deployed a very nice Mendix app. And we calculated overall, we had about 10 million savings, and it's especially in productivity already on our field engineers. But we also need that because field engineers in current market are very hard to come by. And we really, with the other companies, are competing on those kind of people. So we have to increase our productivity. And these things help, and we don't need to wait another 2 years before our enterprise architecture is deployed already.
Very, very, very nice. Cool. Well, let's see.
Where do we stand?
We've got about 15 minutes, and I'm thinking that given the number of people in the room, and the success that you've been having, it might be a nice idea to open it up to questions that people have.
Any question? Yes?
We have a mic because I think this is going to be recorded. Thank you.
You developed the Mendix apps on an Agile frequency, but SAP on a Waterfall. What's the frequency of those releases?
I think I've understood your question. You asked the difference between release cycles of SAP and release cycles on Mendix.
Yeah, because if you have you need a connection, then you have to wait with the development from your apps until SAP is.
Yeah. I'd like to ask Leo to step in for a second, because
our Mendix development sprints are at 2 weeks. 2 weeks notice. And Nicole, you said SAP is a quarter, 3 months.
Okay, but if there's an independency, then you have to wait with the release of your app.
Yes. It's just a case of planning.
There's the challenge. Yes, definitely. Yeah. In the integration, that's the. So point solution is fine, but integration is a little bit more difficult, and so a 3 months development is for integration is the minimum. Yeah, sure.
Have you ever tried to develop SAP in sprints?
Well, actually, our new development, we have a partner who says, well, we're developing Agile, but we're deploying in those ones. So we create a minimum viable product, and you can test, and that's the. No, but the nice thing about it is that the word Agile is because, well, in let's state it a little bit different. We come from a world where, as a customer, I'm happy if someone offers me a project with guarantees that this will be implemented, takes about a year or a year and a half, and then I'm happy. Then the supplier comes in and he gets a very big project, 100 people, and he's based on volume. He's paid for volume, turnover, so he's happy as well. So those two models, they fit together perfectly. If we step in and say we want to change that, that's going to be very difficult. So that they adapt and say, well, we're going to do it agile, and we're going to use sprint for development, and we're going to show every 2 weeks or 4 weeks that we actually deliver something. We're not going to deploy it, but we're actually going to deliver it. I think that's a step ahead already. And I still think you have to honor the waterfall way of working. It fits for a large, complex, monolith application. But it's nice that they actually offered, say, well, we do some agile. Is that an answer to your question?
Willem-Jan Kruisinga from Alliander. I was wondering, you have 80 apps running, and I think a lot of those apps are for the mechanics in the field. How do the mechanics respond to using multiple apps instead of one app that has multiple functionality? Because that's one of our challenges, to get our mechanics to accept working with the apps.
Now, I think understanding your question, we have about 80 apps. Some of there are for the field engineers. Well, some are there for me as well. I've got an app as well for some things. And I think there is the value is the thing that will turn you on. If I look at myself, I got the way I have to, I park my car here, I get a little card, and I don't want to pay it myself. So it's nice if I can give it to my employer and say, oh, please pay this card. With the current process, I have to go to the cop here, scan the ticket, then add it to the applications we have from HR services, and that will be sent, and at that moment in time. It's easier for me. I just have an app. I make a picture, and it goes to my boss. He says, well, yes, and it gets paid. So the trade-off, this is the interesting part. I got this app very quickly. It's easy for me to use, but yes, it's not integrated. So if you don't want to use it, don't use it. We do have another system. Takes you a little bit more time.
So
it's your choice.
It's the reward is time saving. Well, I can also imagine that if you have one group of users, for instance, the mechanics, they ask us in our development to look at the way to make it even easier for them. So they are kind of one step ahead. They have an application for their inspections, for instance. And if I take your example of the sticker app, our mechanics are saying, well, I don't want a separate app for the sticker app. I want it integrated in the app we already have, because it's even easier for us. So that's the challenge. And I was wondering, do you have an idea, or do you just say, well, it's easier than you have already, a separate form or whatever?
If I would respond to that, say if you say, well, it's when I translate your question, it's a UX design. And this is the question: how do you design your applications? For one way, for us, it's very important to keep it small. Every application small, so you can connect to different applications. I would say rethink your UX design. Because it can be several applications, but the user want to have the feeling that he's using one application. So if you, I would say, give that thought some thought, and you'll find it. Yeah.
Hi there. Could you talk a little bit about your strategy and experiences keeping such a large number of applications updated as Mendix releases, updates to their platform?
Yeah, your question is, can you talk about your strategy? Oh, I think a first statement would be, this is, we have two kind of applications. One's, I call this, the architecture is a transformational architecture. And we do have applications also where you say, well, they fit in, they have to last a little bit longer. I think you have to state the difference from those two and start from there. So transitional architecture, I don't worry so much. It's about learning, it's about processes, to getting the new application give a good start, instead of having to go all of those motions as well. For the other part, that's different. We have an enterprise architecture. Within my department, I have 3 enterprise architects. We define, and we are in the process that application life cycles for every application. And so if every new application comes in, it goes to first the project board, and then my team have to say, well, this new change, when it's a larger change, we have to approve. So it's not as much a strategy as well as a process around my enterprise architecture. And I trust my enterprise architects that they define a good TOGAF-based enterprise architecture to work from. Is that an answer for your question?
Thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, if you're up for 2 more questions.
Yeah, I can do 2 more questions.
How is the partnership between SAP and Mendix helping you as a customer?
Nicole, could you respond? Could you respond, or Jeroen? Could you step in? Nicole, I think Nicole, you can answer that one.
Well, to be very honest, at the moment, it isn't. I think that's the most honest answer. We have a partnership with Mendix. We have a partnership with SAP. And it's the enterprise architects within the department of Oscar who bring those strategies together. So I think it's a good advice that we take more advantage of it.
I hope we answered your question. I hope the connection SAP and Mendix will mature over time.
Yeah, I don't know if people know, but we do, because SAP has this practice, we're able to leverage it. We do publish out a several quarters ahead roadmap for points of integration across the SAP properties. And we try to be as detailed and explicit about that as one can in those things. But if there are things that you're not seeing yet, or the priorities seem different to you, that's certainly something that we would listen to the extent that we can affect SAP as well. But so far it's been quite collaborative. I mean, the SAP, the Mendix for HANA, for example, required an improvement in HANA that they'd never implemented before. And they did it so it would work, which says something about their adaptability. But
thank you for sharing your experiences. One thing I was wondering about is the thought process that you went through in deciding for approaching this change, which resulted in adopting Mendix, and how you managed to get the organization to follow you in that recommendation.
Well, I think I have to be honest on that. I wasn't there yet. Our predecessors did a very good job on that. But I cannot elaborate a lot on that. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer your question.
so you found a situation to which you were perfectly aligned.
Well, the only thing is I can tell you how we did it in the previous company, but that one was quite small. So this was completely different.
We can do one more, and then.
I think I'm not the only one interested in this question. You referenced to Mendix in regards to as a transitional architecture, as a kind of understanding like I will throw it away when I have finally arrived in the architecture I want to be in the final state. So it's a bit confusing because everyone, I think most of the guys here in the room would like to have such a software factory and the ability to be so agile and to do applications in 2 or 3 months. And you say, yeah, well, they are just for immediate, and then we will get to the final state. We will have the perfect solution, and then we throw away the intermediate solutions.
Actually, I have to, if you ask me the question, where do we use Mendix for? Because that's a little bit different questions. I will give an answer. We use it for three things. So this is the transitional architecture, which makes it easier to move within the boundaries of my enterprise architecture. The second one is non-standard software. So everything what's non-standard and can be application and can be built with a Mendix-like application platform. We use so, and that helps us not to develop in .NET and all kinds of other languages, which if people are used to, they're quite quick at, maybe even as quick as Mendix if you're object-oriented or component-based. The third one is the mobile one. We develop mobile apps very quickly. So it's not really you're in the factory and then we throw away everything. It's only the transitional part. And I think in the transitional part is where you see within IT that our customers are becoming happy very quickly. And if you compare that to our new SAP for HANA program, it will take another 2 years. So you're able to make someone happy in 3 months. That's where we're working for. And if it's throw away after 2 years, well, or maybe you're doing something else anyway. You're not nodding.
I think maybe you will be surprised in the end how much applications you will keep, because the customers are more satisfied with the custom solution than with the standard product with the workforce management in the back end. They don't want to use it directly, they want to use the Mendix app you already have.
Oh, if we ever get there, that would be nice. Our central program is run by business, so he's a business owner. And I'm already happy that the same functionality is delivered. So make them happy that this way we deliver applications for supporting the process to make them more efficient. But there is also a benefit from integration, to have everything in one package and not custom built as a point solution. And we really have to, because that's why we go to the enterprise architecture. Otherwise we said, well, this is not a transitional, this is just our enterprise. And we're going for non-standard software for everything, because if we take the Oracle product, well, it's not non-standard. It's just it takes just as much work as doing it with Mendix. But that's not completely true. So there is a benefit also to go for a standard product.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Oscar.
Thank you, Gordon, for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.